Good morning, everybody. Call the meeting to order. I'll call the roll, Cassandra.
Of course, Secretary Chaudhry.
Present.
Mr. Derenberg.
Present.
Ms. Eberhardt.
Here.
Chuck Boyd as designee for Secretary Flora.
Present.
Mr. Gibbons is absent. Ms. Lala. Dr. Lawson is absent. And Chair Casemeyer.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We do have a couple minor adjustments to the agenda, which I think you all received yesterday. Very minor. Any public comment, Cassandra?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Alex, you want to give your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the Commission. Today, I will provide an update briefly on 4 items. First, our agency's transition to independent status is continuing, and we're most of the way through our financial transition, with payroll and most of the other budget items now under our own roof. We continue to plan for the completion of the transition by the end of December. Again, in this transition, I really want to extend our deep thanks to Superintendent for support consistently and MSDE staff. It's been very, very important helping us get transitioned and settled. Second, I'd like to note that the status of our office move is a bit delayed. Tenant fit-out work has continued to suffer some delays of a number of weeks due to financial difficulties on the part of the contractor. Cassandra has been coordinating with the Stadium Authority staff to best move the work forward. We have not received yet an updated recovery schedule. However, we're hoping that the work will be completed for a move-in date in late November, and I'll provide you another update at your next meeting. Third, I'd like to just summarize briefly the kickoff phase here for the fiscal 2025 CIP. Last Wednesday was the due date for LEA's CIP requests to the state that you set when you approved the instructions and timeline earlier this year. By the 4th, we had received 21 LEA's request packages as well as a request from the Maryland School for the Blind, and we expect 3 more late submissions which will be brought to you at your November 9th meeting with a request that you accept those submissions after the deadline date. The submissions to date include requests for 213 projects, including major projects and systemic projects, but there are more expected, which will take us well over 200 projects for staff to evaluate in this cycle. This is heavy demand for state funding support across the board, and it reflects what we know of the current statewide backlog of deferred capital maintenance and capital renewal. To better quantify this backlog, IAC staff are working now on quantifying the scope of the condition deficit in Maryland school facilities, as well as the other 2 main areas of need, which are the additional classrooms needed to implement the blueprints pre-K requirements and the energy efficiency and decarbonization improvements to buildings that will be required to help the state meet the General Assembly's climate protection goals. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge briefly Maryland's very positive reputation out there in the country when it comes to school facilities. As you may or may not know, Maryland is a member state in the National Council on School Facilities. The National Council is the organization that represents state-level school facilities agencies like the IAC and provides a very useful and valuable forum in which states save each other time, effort, and money by sharing best practices and work products. Maryland has benefited from information gained from our colleagues in the National Council, and we've been consulted by a number of other states on what we do and how we do it. In just the last few months, I've been consulted by my counterparts in 4 states who are very interested to learn about the IAC's statewide facilities assessment and the new gross area baselines that you adopted last month. Maryland increasingly is being viewed as one of the most innovative and proactive states around school facilities, and I've been invited for the 2nd year in a row to present on a panel at the National Council's annual conference, which takes place next month in Washington, D.C. And that concludes my Executive Director's report for this month. Happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions for Alex? Ms. Lemke, welcome. Nice to see you. Okay, the consent agenda. Are there any questions about the consent agenda anyone has? Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Everhart seconds. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's move on to item 3. Alex, you want to go over the COMAR revisions to adopt the GAB square footage, please?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman. One moment. The slides are coming up on the screen now.
Should be seeing them.
Are they visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good morning again, members of the Commission. This presentation is about the proposed gross area baseline add-ons and the changes in state-rated capacity that staff are bringing to you today for your consideration and approval.
You want to give us a little background, Alex? We went over the other GAB issues a month or so ago.
Absolutely. Sure.
What are these?
So these are the final stage of the pieces connected with the gross area baseline revisions that you approved last month. And I'm going to give a little bit of description here on those as we come through these slides. After our preliminary presentation at the August IAC meeting and your approval last month of the gross area baseline updates in September, we continued to take feedback from stakeholders regarding these related changes. In addition, we have included as part of the agenda packet the specific recommended changes to COMAR that will incorporate both the GAB updates you approved last month and the recommended changes being presented to you today. We've previously provided considerable background information on the gross area baselines and our process for developing this current proposal. In essence, last month, you adopted the updated square footage gross area baselines that are given on a per student basis to each project that we fund, major project, using as its kind of foundation, the projected enrollment for the school project. And those provide the base for the calculation of allocated funding on square footage for a project. However, some of the issues raised included how to address the needs of communities with concentration of poverty, high percentage of English language learners, and how to better allocate space for career technical education programs. And those are now essentially addressed through these add-ons that we're presenting today. So as a reminder, in 2022's House Bill 1290, the General Assembly mandated that the IAC update the gross area baselines to take into account the 6 key topics listed here on this slide, coming from the blueprint for Maryland's future. And now Melissa will go into greater detail on the proposed changes before you today.
Thanks, Alex. Good morning, Mr. Chair and
Morning.
members of the Commission. So this is the third and final presentation we have for you related to the Blueprint Facilities Work Group. Just to start off as a reminder, the IAC and the work group did take advantage of the process to review additional items impacting the state funding formulas for school construction that are outside of but directly related to statutory mandate. We determined that changes in addition to those required by legislation could substantially improve the overall process to developing project level square footage and funding allocations. Those items are and have been included in the package of changes we've brought to you previously and also again today. So to summarize, like Alex mentioned, the 4 requests we have before you today, in addition to the gross area baselines, include changes to the state-rated capacity calculations for high schools, specifically related to physical education programming, concentration of poverty gross square foot add-on, the English learner gross square foot add-on, and changes to the way CTE spaces are calculated to include a new gross square foot add-on in lieu of the previous per pupil allocations. So we have a little summary of each of these changes. First, the state-rated capacity. The state rated capacity is the number of students that a facility can serve. This is determined by the IAC using a statewide standard that set the students per teaching space and are adopted into regulation for the purposes of equality and funding statewide. For each facility, the state rated capacity is based on the number of classes and other teaching stations it contains. These changes presented here today affect specifically high schools and physical education spaces only. So there are two core components to the change. The first is the change to the number of teaching stations counted for a high school gymnasium. Previously, the formula contained in the Administrative Procedures Guide has resulted in high school gymnasiums often being counted as 4 teaching stations. Based on the assumptions in the state rated capacity calculation, this would require that 4 classes be taught in the gym for 85% of the school day, which is just not a practical reality. High school gymnasiums are typically designed as double gyms, means that in addition to the main competition basketball court and bleachers, the space can fit 2 sideways basketball courts. They also typically include a divider curtain down the middle to be used during the school day when 2 classes are being taught in the space at the same time. These spaces typically range from 10,000 net square feet to a maximum of 13,000 net square feet. Though they may regularly contain 4 classes using the gym at the same time during a normal school day, it's not practical to meet the 85% utilization. Calculating these type spaces as 2 teaching stations better fits with the reality of how high school physical education programming is scheduled. Occasionally, an LEA will also choose to build a larger gym such as a triple gym. In a triple gym, similar to a double gym, it's 3 sideways basketball courts fit in addition to the competition court, and often 2 divider curtains also. In these cases, and for all cases where gymnasiums are designed over 13,000 net square feet, they will count as 3 teaching stations. The second component of this is the development of physical education program often requires several very specific spaces designed for specific purposes. This includes spaces such as weight rooms and fitness rooms with large, heavy fixed equipment that is difficult to move. State rated capacity calculations anticipate that all these spaces be used at the 85% utilization. But because of a lack of flexibility, these spaces often aren't able to be used at that rate. So we're proposing that one such space, up to 2,500 net square feet, be permitted to be included in the program and not be counted toward the SRC. IAC staff will review and approve this request based on equipment layouts provided by the LEA. Okay, next we're going to look at the concentration of poverty gross square foot add-on. This gross square foot add-on has been developed to provide for the additional wraparound services required by Blueprint to support communities with a higher than 55% concentration of poverty. Since space requirements vary based on the size of the school and also the percentage of the population in need of support services, the add-on has been developed on a sliding scale to include both the size of the student population and the concentration of poverty percentage. There are 3 tiers to school size, as you can see here, less than 600, inclusive of 600 and 900, and greater than 900 student populations. The total gross square foot add-on is then applied at a 60 square feet per percentage increase, starting at the 55% and increasing to a maximum of 85%. So just for a quick example, if you had a project with an eligible enrollment of 700 students, you fit into that middle tier, and if there was a 65% concentration of poverty, you'd start with a 1,500 gross square feet add-on, then you'd multiply 10, which is the difference between the 65 and the 55, by the 60 square foot per percentage for an increase of 600 gross square feet. So the total add-on for a school under these circumstances would be 2,100 gross square feet. This add-on is specifically based on information provided by MSDE on the concentration of poverty, and that information reflects the most recent population. In contrast, LEAs in the state are considering long-term portfolio sustainability and are considering a forward-looking analysis. Therefore, IAC staff and MSDE are working to coordinate an appropriate methodology for analyzing populations that are in some way changing from the current conditions. So this will take into account co-located and merging facilities and also growth and redistricting. The next one is the English Learner add-on. This methodology is used very similar to the concentration of poverty. It both has a sliding scale of student capacity and also a sliding scale of percentage of eligible population. So from our research, the work with this work group, it's the 10% ELs percentage up to the 15% ELs where we see the most impact to specific spaces intended to support that population. So very similar to the concentration of poverty add-on, every percentage over the 10% gets an increase to the gross square foot add-on, but in this case, it's 25 square feet versus the 60 in the concentration of poverty. So following up with a quick example from last time, that same 700 student population has an EL percentage of 20%. That means it starts at 1,000 gross square feet, and then 10, which is the percentage over 10%, times the 25 gross square feet. So an additional 250 square feet get added to that 1,000 baseline for a total add-on of 1,250 square feet. Similar to the concentration of poverty add-on, the IAC staff will work collaboratively to determine the appropriate add-on for school populations that will be changing as a result of the capital project request. Okay, so the last one is the career and technology education add-on. As we've previously mentioned, this add-on removes the methodology of adding the square foot per student for CTE student and instead provides an add-on based on the program being provided. This better takes into account the specific needs of the program versus a general average per student. So IAC staff has analyzed the most recently developed programs and projects and prepared a methodology that is individualized for each specific MSDE approved program. There are two parts to this add-on. First is to develop an appropriate size scale for the gross square foot programs. We're recommending 5 different tiers from extra small to extra large, and you can see those and the gross square foot proposed on the left side of the slide. Keep in mind that the CTE student is already counted in the eligible enrollment and therefore is already included in the gross square foot per student. So this add-on is in addition to what already is provided in the GAB. The second part of this add-on is the list of approved MSDE career clusters and program offerings from the Office of College and Career Pathways. This list appears on the right side of the slide. The chart included here will be provided as a guideline on the IAC website, but there are a significant number of sub-programs in each of these career clusters and new programs being developed all the time. IAC staff will review and determine the exact add-on for each project request based on the information provided by the LEA. As is currently the case, a standalone CTE center will be considered differently and evaluated on an individual basis by IAC staff. A standalone CTE center is a school in which only offers CTE programs, and the students only attend part of their school day. They continue to have a seat in their home school where they receive the remainder of their high school curriculum. So this concludes the presentation, and I will turn it back over to Alex.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. Mr. Chair, I would like to commend Melissa and the many IAC staff members who contributed so much hard work to developing this set of really well thought out recommendations. If adopted, they will result in a very meaningful update and refinement of the gross area baselines. Now, Melissa and I stand for any questions that you might have on this presentation and the proposed add-ons to the GABs.
Any questions? Yeah, Melissa did a great job. Thank you very much for you and your team. Any questions for Alex or Melissa? Secretary Chaudhry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure I heard this correctly. The CTE add-ons are in addition to the GAB. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Right. Thank you for that.
Someone want to read the motion? Alex or Melissa?
Yes, one moment, Mr. Chair. I will do that. The motion is to approve amendments to COMAR 143902 to enact a new COMAR 14390201 that incorporates the IAC's gross area baselines by reference, and to amend COMAR 14390206 maximum state construction allocation to include gross area baseline square footage add-ons as presented today for school projects for concentration of poverty, English learners, and career and technical education programs. Second, to approve amendments to COMAR 14390204 state-rated capacity to clarify the number of teaching stations included in gymnasiums of varying sizes, and to, upon application to the IAC or its designee, allow the exclusion of one physical education classroom up to 2,500 net square feet that contains specialized equipment that cannot be stored or relocated. Third, to adopt the IAC CTE square footage add-on size category listing as presented in this item, and to direct staff to publish the listing to the IAC website. And fourth and finally, to renumber the provisions of COMAR 143902 as needed to accommodate the amendments proposed herein.
Thank you. For purposes of discussion, would someone like to make that motion, please? Ms. Everhart, second by Ms. Lemke. Any discussion? Ms. Everhart.
I would just like to comment and thank the staff of the IAC and everyone across the state who participated in this process. I think what you have come up with is great. I love the add-ons. I really think they will be significant in all these different areas. You have come up with very creative ways to make the funding formula more flexible. And I think it took a lot of time and work to think through all of this. And thank you for making it happen.
Thank you, Linda. Any other questions? Yeah, the level of detail is incredible. We want to thank you all very much. On the motion, all in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, item 4.
Thank you.
Adoption of final COMAR revisions 14390205. Cassandra?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. You may recall that at your July meeting, you approved the new state cost shares for each county, which are required to be updated according to the formula in COMAR every 2 years. You can see those cost shares on pages 79 and 80 of your agenda. That approval initiated a 2-step state process for promulgating revised regulations. After you approved the proposed regulation, we published the changes in the Maryland Register and opened a 30-day public comment period. We only received one comment on the regulations from Baltimore City Public Schools, which you can find on page 81 of your agenda. I'd like to briefly address the points that were raised in the City Schools letter. First, City Schools expressed a concern that due to the January to February timing of MSD's annual release of updated concentration of poverty or CPG figures for each school, city schools could have projects for which the CPG percentage might drop between the formulation in the fall of city school CIP request and the project list and the early spring CPG update. It's the position of IAC staff that for each CIP cycle, the IAC should use the most recent finalized CPG figures provided by MSDE, which would be from early spring of the year in which the CIP cycle begins in the fall. This ensures two things. First, that each LEA and the IAC will have finalized and dependable CPG figures in hand and known by everyone when we're preparing for starting that CIP cycle. And second, that planning for and executing the CIP by both the LEAs and the IAC can take place without any risk of last minute changes or recalculations, even if for some reason the release of the CPG figures might be delayed. City schools also expressed a concern about the calculation of add-ons for facilities housing multiple programs. IAC staff are working with MSDE to develop a methodology to address such cases and are confident that we'll arrive at a solution that will appropriately recognize the characteristic of the enrollments in each facility. City Schools does point out in their letter that in fiscal year 25, 151 out of 152 of their schools are projected to have a CPG rate of 80% or higher, making nearly every school in the district eligible for the full 10% CPG add-on should a project be submitted for state participation. Even in fiscal year 26, when Baltimore City's state share percentage is expected to fall to 91%, the CPG add-on will likely result in project level state shares of 100% in nearly every possible project. City schools also suggest that the IAC apply a single district-wide CPG rate rather than rate specific to each school. Under Maryland law, the IAC must apply school-specific CPG rates that are provided by MSDE. As a result, the IAC lacks the authority to grant this request. Finally, city schools request that the IAC adjust Baltimore City's state share to be no less than 95%. Maryland law requires that the IAC adopt in regulation a state local cost share formula and then apply that formula to all counties. In July, you did exactly that and adopted the results, which is the item that we're talking about final adoption today. The law doesn't give the IAC the authority to manually adjust the results of that formula for a specific county. Because of this, we can't grant city schools requests that we modify their state cost share. At this time, we do recommend that you proceed to the second step of regulation promulgation by approving the final COMAR revisions with no changes as presented in this item.
Thank you, Cassandra. Any questions about Baltimore City's letter and Cassandra's response to those comments? Cassandra, you want to read the motion as proposed?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I am grateful that my motion is much shorter than the one that Alex just read. The motion is to adopt the final COMAR revisions as published in the August 25th, 2023 Maryland Register, Volume 50, Issue 17, page 1011.
Would someone like to make that motion, please? Mr. Darenberg, second by Ms. Everhart. Any more discussion on the motion? All in favor, raise your hands or say aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you, Cassandra. Item 5, revisions to Executive Director Evaluation Form and Policy approved in April 2023. Ms. Everhart.
Yes. As chair of the evaluation committee, we have just 2 minor changes that we would like to make to the policy that we adopted several months ago. One of those is instead of assigning a weight, we can choose to assign a weight. When we were trying to work through the evaluation, we realized that we needed to have some flexibility in that area. And then the second, instead of getting input going to a third party, we wanted it just to come back to the evaluation committee to be able to get input that way. So I would like to make the motion to approve changes in the evaluation process as I just explained.
Do I hear a second to that motion? Ms. Lemke. Any discussion about the motion proposed by Ms. Everhart? All in favor say aye or raise your hands. Any opposed? First of all, I want to thank Ms. Everhart and her committee for all the work they've done over the last, how long? It seems like a year almost to, and all the work they've done in the committees. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. For our final item for the day, The commission expects to discuss a personnel matter and receive legal advice from counsel pursuant to certain provisions of the general provisions article of the annotated code of Maryland. I will ask for a motion to close this meeting. Do I have a motion to close the meeting? Mr. Derenberg, second by Ms. Everhart. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries, and just so you know, the commission will adjourn from this closed session. So thank you very much.